Would it be worse if the Jets were based here? Actually, the Panthers are.
It's kind of the same.
Almost. It's pretty close. Luke DeCock, friend, News and Observer, columnist, man about town, observer of football. Sir, hope you're well. Thank you very much. I do want to talk about the state of football in this state. The Jets would fit right in, would they not?
Yeah, I mean, I think when people say, how could things get worse for the Panthers, I think having Aaron Rodgers at quarterback would actually probably make things worse because it just seems like he's a complete chaos agent and, quite frankly, hasn't played that well.
No.
I like, is anyone really surprised that this didn't go well with the Jets? It's sort of like, the Panthers. Is anyone really surprised that they've struggled this year? I don't know why you would be. Same as the Jets. But, there's probably some commonalities that the Panthers are sort of becoming the 21st century Jets, some sporadic success in their past.
Yeah.
One very famous quarterback. And then a lot of grim years is sort of what would this put this? This would put this in the Richard Todd era of the Jets.
I appreciate you bringing up Richard Todd. I was a big fan of Richard Todd. That was my formative Jets fan years, and I have successfully through a 12-step program kicked myself of that habit over the last several years. So I am a free man. I am a free agent when it comes to being a football fan, and I have been pretty objective of watching the Panthers. I thought their defense would be bad this year. I didn't think it would be this bad, but I thought it would be bad this year. I thought it was kind of like the raw numbers looked good last year, but I didn't think their defense was good last year. And I thought their offense would struggle. I didn't think it would be this bad. What is your read on where we are with the Panthers? Let me narrow that. Do you think the Bryce Young era is over?
I don't think it is. It wouldn't surprise me if it was, because there's been very little to suggest. Not that he's going to be a good NFL quarterback, although I think you can certainly make that argument. I just think there's very little to suggest he'll ever be successful here.
Right.
It just seems like both player and team need a change of scenery. The thinking in trading up for him was always flawed. There's no second guessing there. My position on it was I wouldn't do this, but if you're going to trade up, and give up a first-round pick the next year, which I think is dumb, and B, if you're going to do it to take Bryce Young and not C.J. Stroud, you better be right. And it's obvious that they weren't. They got this one wrong. Physically, at this point, he isn't capable of playing quarterback in the NFL, and they haven't put him in a position to succeed. That's a very dangerous combination. So, could a year behind Andy Dalton, another off season, you come back next year and see what he can do. I think you've got enough sunk costs in this that maybe that's the best plan. But there's also a part of me that says if you've made a mistake and you've made a mistake of this magnitude, it may be best to cut your losses and start over. You're going to be bad for a few years now either way. Like, you might as well bottom out, get back to where you were 2 years ago, and try to get the quarterback decision right. But I think this is just another example of how, David Tepper, and the blame rests with him on this one, has just absolutely mismanaged this franchise right into the ground, starting from almost the moment he bought it. And every, decision after decision has been bad. I still don't think that Scott Fitterer was that bad of a GM. I don't think he was great, but the big decisions that were imposed upon him from above have been disastrous. And, you look at what Sam Darnold has done elsewhere. Not that he was ever going to be the capital T, capital A answer here. Right. But clearly he's a competent NFL quarterback. He did not look that way here, except for maybe that game against the Jets.
Baker Mayfield's the same way.
And I was getting to that. Baker Mayfield last year goes up to Lambeau and absolutely picks apart the Packers with, a couple receivers, but nothing special. Then you veer again to Bryce Young and you trade away your best receiver before you ever get here just to get him. So failure after failure after failure. I feel bad for Panthers fans, as I wrote a couple years ago. I don't know why you would continue to subject yourself to this. Doesn't mean you're not a fan. Doesn't mean you can't, tailgate or have some beers and watch the game and have fun. But, if you're personally invested in this at this point, you're kind of getting what you asked for, because it's going to be bad for a while.
Here's why I think that Bryce Young won't play here anymore at all. And I could even bring up the fact that yesterday or Sunday, Dave Canales, when asked why he brought Bryce Young in, was basically, we had some offensive linemen out and basically saying, I want to protect Andy. And wait a second, you drafted Bryce Young. You let him get his rear end beat up last year. He survived that year. And now he's the shield for Andy Dalton. There's that. And the fact when they made the decision to go to Andy Dalton, the day before, Canales said, Bryce Young is our quarterback. The next day, you decided you're going to Andy Dalton, and there was zero conversation about Bryce Young needs a reset. He needs to watch. It was all about Andy Dalton is our quarterback. They had already decided at that point to move on. The only way Bryce plays is if Dalton is awful, which I guess is a possibility, or he gets hurt. The only way we see Bryce Young start a game, maybe he'll start games 16 and 17 of the season.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Look, I don't disagree.
Just to build up his trade value.
Obviously, that decision was not made with an eye to what's best for Bryce Young. It was made with an eye to what's best for this team right now. But part of that was, especially when you saw what Andy Dalton did once he came in, was they were not getting quarterback play that's acceptable.
Right. I agree with you.
It was unacceptable. He was not up to the job. And for a number one overall pick to be in that position at the start of year two is a damning indictment of the position that they put him in, of the development curve that they put him on. And frankly, Bryce Young didn't ask to go number one overall, but he has not been able to live up to that. Again, I think there's a lot of blame to go around. But the way that the team responded to Andy Dalton coming in clearly indicated that everybody in that locker room, everybody in the front office, maybe the owner, who knows, realized that this guy at this point is not even close to an NFL quarterback.
But he's worse this year than he was last year.
Grim situation.
There's no rhyme. There's no reason he should be markedly worse this year than he was last year. And he is like last year's version of Bryce Young would have been kind of acceptable behind this team because he would have a better offensive line and better weapons.
There is one reason, and that's you're asking a guy who just came in the league to learn an entirely new offensive system just when he's finally gotten maybe his brain around the first one he was asked to learn. So I do think that's unfair on a young quarterback. When you look at quarterbacks who were highly touted and failed, and let's throw Sam Darnold in there as an example, typically one of the constants is multiple offensive coordinators, multiple offensive schemes earlier in their career. Whereas, the example everyone uses is Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay playing behind Brett Favre, but he also was in a system that was constant that entire time. He was able to absorb it.
Yep.
Even if he'd been playing, that would have been true. Obviously, it helped him not to play, and the Panthers didn't have that luxury, although they sort of backed themselves in that position now.
They had the luxury. They could have started Dalton last year.
They've done this. Well, yeah, fair enough. My point is, continuing point is, whatever this kid's faults are, whatever his inadequacies, they've done him absolutely zero favors, and
Agreed.
That's a tough situation.
All right, let's move on to North Carolina. I said this a couple of weeks ago that after the 70 points that James Madison put on the Tar Heels, followed by the 20-point come-from-ahead loss to Duke, I'll be surprised if we get to Halloween and we haven't had an announcement at UNC. I think Mack Brown definitely provided a real service to North Carolina by coming back and reestablishing relationships with North Carolina high schools, which produce a ton of NFL talent, and you need to keep more of those players here. I don't follow recruiting enough to know how many of the North Carolina players he kept here, but I think they recruited fine. But it's not going well on the field. Even with NFL quarterbacks, it wasn't going all that well on the field. What is your view of North Carolina football as we sit here 6 weeks into the season?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Mack did what he came here to do, which was to reestablish the foundation of UNC football, to give it credibility again, which I think he has. There were good years in there, and even that first year, they jumped right back into competitiveness. But I think it was also probably time for him to hand the keys over to someone else after last season. Yep. Go out with Drake May and not exactly going out on top, but still feeling like you left things in a good position, because the on-field product has not measured up, and that's really been true the last couple of years. The failure to make the most of, go back to Sam Howell.
Yep.
The failure to make the most of two NFL quarterbacks, which some programs would kill to have one of those guys in a 20-year span. And the fact that the defense is basically the same as it was under Larry Fedora. This is an issue that now stretches over multiple administrations, almost multiple generations. And Mack's inability to fix that, certainly he tried and made a number of staff changes and things like that, certainly suggests that it's a problem that's bigger than him, but it also suggests that maybe it's time to give someone else a chance. I think you can't say enough good things about what Mack has done for the university, for the football program. Mm-hmm. He did everything they asked him to do when he came here within reason. It's not working now. It's time for a change. My suspicion is this is something that will happen after the season, as opposed to Halloween. As you said, I think Mack's earned the right to go out on his own terms, if he indeed does go out on his own terms. But I think that's something that there's not much gained by making a change mid-season at this point. Make it a valedictory, make it an encomium, and let him walk out on his own terms. But I do think we've reached the point where that has to happen.
My only fear about it is that Mack will do the same thing that David Cutcliffe did, think that he can change it. Bomani Jones said that, and he has experience as a Texas fan watching Mack at Texas for all those years, and at the end, it was obvious that it was over. But Mack didn't want it to be over. So, I hope this ends a lot, and I think it will end a lot better than it did down in Austin. At NC State, Luke, this was supposed to be better, and I think it is more of a service of the uncertainty when you have to rely on the transfer portal so much, and not we have to, but when you choose to, I think sometimes it just doesn't work out. And I think this is 2 years in a row where the quarterback didn't really work out. Grayson McCall is injured now, so that's a completely separate issue. The quarterback just didn't work out, and some of the pieces are great. Joe Lee as a tight end is awesome. You could bring him in 1,000 times in a row. That guy's going to be awesome. Jordan Waters hasn't really worked out for NC State. What do you make of what's gone on in Raleigh?
Yeah, to me, it reminds me a little bit of what happened at Wake Forest in the middle to end of the Jim Grobe era, where they got away a little bit from what had made them successful, which was sort of taking these underrated, undersized kids and, grooming them up and turning them into ACC players. And NC State, over the course of Dave Doran's tenure, has been a developmental program, and a good one. They take kids and they make them into good players. It's harder to do that with portal kids. And, you want to reward the kids who have stuck with you. So I think it's just sort of, you want to do what's current. You want to do what everyone else is doing. I don't think it's a malicious thing that you say, they've made a huge mistake. But I think you learn that, NC State as a program probably needs to take a look in the mirror and say, look, how did we get here? How did we raise these expectations? How did we raise this bar? How can we get back to that in this era of football? Part of that is you can make the argument, well, okay, they did that. They never won more than 9 games. So they started, getting into the portal more and doing it this way to try to get over the hump. And I think that's fair. I think you can say, okay, it was well-intentioned, that this is what they thought they had to do to inject, game-ready talent into the system, and they could have it both ways, and that would get them over the top. I think that's all well and good and sounds great and worth a try. But it hasn't worked. And I think that there's a time for retrenchment and saying, hey, where do we lose our way here? What do we have to do to get back to what made us successful in this program, in this area, in this state? Because, as much as you may say, oh, they haven't won more than nine games, they were winning 9 games pretty consistently for a period of time, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
You got to get back. You got to get back to that. I mean, technically, I think they still could, but it certainly seems unlikely at this point. And that State Carolina game certainly looms as a forgettable edition of the rivalry, certainly in terms of what the stakes are going to be.
It could, but it could be a fun game, and we could have a lot of fireworks on the field that day. Luke DeCock of the News and Observer. Next time we chat, we'll talk about the Hurricanes. Will I see you Friday evening? Yeah, no, we'll be there, and curious to see what the new look Hurricanes look like actually under fire. And obviously big year for Yuri Kochetkov, big year for Andrei Svechnikov. I think we'll see Jackson Blake at some point, if not Friday. I think we'll see him Friday. Certainly earned that opportunity. Yep. That's exciting to have a kid like that come in and make a case for himself and claim a spot. Someone was asking me who he reminded me of, and I said he reminds me a little bit of young Jason Blake with the Islanders. That may be a little facile, but there's certainly some DNA there that you can kind of see. So interesting. It's going to be an interesting year. I don't know if you'd noticed this, Adam, and then I'll get off the line here, but all of the cognoscenti are picking the Rangers or the Devils to win the division. Yes. All of the analytics folks still have the Hurricanes number 1, which I found fascinating. There's a sense in the league that the Hurricanes have retrenched. And there's a sense among the analytics folks that they're right back where they were. I agree with you. I saw that the analytics pick, and I'm like, okay, I think they'll be good. I think the Devils have the best roster. I'm not sold on Sheldon Keefe as the coach. I think the Hurricanes and the Rangers will have something to say. But we'll have some fun. I'll see you Friday night. Thank you so much, man. You got it, AJ.